Oh, this is not how I wanted to start this week's episode of Union Smack. This is not how I wanted to start any episode of Union Smack. But as you well know, and as the world knows, we have a new WWE United Kingdom champion, and that is not a sentence I ever thought I'd be saying. That is not a sentence I ever wanted to say. But it's happened. If you've been living under a rock, then Walter beat Pete Dunne at NXT Takeover New York. And it's done. 685 days done. And what a reign it was. I'm not going to sit here and wax lyrical. I know this is a different opening from what we usually have on Union Smack, but I don't care. I really don't care. It is, the week was awful. But I would just like to say a big thank you to Travis, who couldn't be with us here tonight. He's got a few technical problems of his own. And thank you to Logan and everyone on our little private Twitter group for showing so much concern when Pete Dunne lost. Very touched. Thank you very much. As far as Pete Dunne and Walter go now, they will have a rematch this coming weekend. It may be before you hear this episode. It may be after you hear this episode, depending on when we get it out. But at the Glasgow tapings on April 19th and April 20th, which is this coming Friday and Saturday, I'm recording this on Tuesday night, Pete Dunne will receive his rematch against Walter, as confirmed by WWE's Twitter account on Monday. And from what I'm hearing, it will be his final NXT UK match before he is moved up to the main roster or NXT. Fingers crossed for NXT. We all know how that's going to end. Walter will win again and then move on to Jordan Devlin. But I would just like to take a few seconds before we move on to this week's review of NXT UK episode 34 to 37 pre-takeover New York, just to catch us all up with the action. The reign, the 685 days, was undoubtedly the best time I've had in professional wrestling in many, many years. I spent the week writing a special piece for my NXT UK book, which will be out later this year. I spent the week making the Pete Dunne tribute video, which you will be able to see now on the channel. So go back and watch that. It's just my little tribute to a reign that meant the world to me, really. And I don't know what else to say. It hurts that it's over. I don't like that it's over. However, my initial thoughts on Walter have changed. I still think he's limited, depending on who he's up against. But at New York, he showed a lot. He showed a lot of promise, and if they turn him heel and keep that Walter, then undoubtedly he will grow into someone who can carry NXT UK in the not too distant future. It's difficult to know what to say now, really, because since we began this podcast way back in 2017, I've sung Pete Dunne's praises, and rightly so. He's been champion for as long as we've been doing Union Smack. Our good friend Rocky met him in Singapore while he was champion. Got him to do the video you'll see in a few short moments before we go into this week's review. And it just seems very odd and it's almost heartbreaking that it's over. It is for me anyway. I took the reign that seriously. I loved it that much. But they say all good things must come to an end. Our friend Logan over on the Future of Wrestling podcast, his post show for NXT Takeover New York, he said reigns, streaks even, were made to die. And that's true. All good things come to an end. And I will admit there was there was a little tear. There was a little tear when Walter came off that top rope, and when the referee counted to 3. Damn. Honestly, I felt like I'd lost a family member. That is how much it hurt. But on we go. On we go. I'm not sure I'll be able to watch the rematch. I haven't gone back and watched the first match, I'll be honest. I watched it as it went out live. I've not gone back to rewatch it a second time. I can't take it just yet. I'm not sure my nerves will be able to take the rematch, even though I know Pete Dunne is going to lose. Because what sense does it make, swapping the titles back and forth? So there we go. I'm not as angry as I thought I'd be. I thought I'd come on here and have a big old rant and, put down Walter and put down the decision making. But actually, given time to digest the result, then it's okay. It's okay. It was bound to happen. It got to the point where it was like a band-aid that needed ripping off. And now it's been ripped off. It's fine. Pete can move on. And he'll do bigger and better things. Before I end this part and we go into our review, you can find me on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant. You can find Travis on Twitter at the Hibiki TMD. Sorry, still very emotional. And you can find all our merchandise on unionsmack.bigcartel.com. And join me in just a few moments when we will go into the first episode of our 4-episode Mammoth review. The third one I think we've done, the third omnibus edition. I believe we've done. Travis should be with us for the next one, fingers crossed. If he's not, then we will go it alone once again. But before then, I'm going to get a drink, I'm going to calm myself down, I'm going to wipe my tears away, and I will leave you in the very good company of the former, fuck, it still hurts to say that, the former WWE United Kingdom champion, Pete Dunne.
I'm the Bruiserweight Pete Dunne, and you're listening to the Union Smack podcast.
Welcome back to Union Smack, and here we go with the first episode in our NXT UK Omnibus. We are covering episodes 34 to 37 this time around. Next time it will be episodes 38 to 42, I believe. I'll check that and get back to you at the end of the episode. And as you can hear, I've cheered myself up a bit. I'm not so down anymore. It still hurts. It's going to hurt for a while. But let's crack on with it. Episode 34 from the Coventry Skydome opened with Johnny Saint and Sid Scarlett, still the worst double act in professional wrestling today, or possibly ever. As they approached the arena, they were stopped by the unseen reporter, who we've never seen. We don't know who it is just yet. I'm determined to find out. They were basically congratulated on the success of NXT UK and asked what we can expect from this episode, from this show. As always, Sid Scala is the mouthpiece. I never want to hear Johnny Saint talk ever again, even though he announced the main event as the Coffey Brothers versus Walter and Pete Dunne. And Sid Scala filled in the gaps. We've got a big night in store, says Scala. Going to see the in-ring debut of the newest NXT UK superstar, Kaylee Ray. And obviously, we've just heard about the main event. This has to be the easiest money Johnny Saint has ever made in his career. He stands there, he looks like a grumpy old granddad, and he lets his younger, what looks like his younger rent boy do the talking. The first match on the card is Flash Morgan Webster versus Wolfgang. I like this. I did like this a lot. It had a fast pace to it. It was all go from the beginning. However, I do feel like we're treading old ground. We're going over old material when there's no reason for it. I know they needed to get Wolfgang over, and obviously Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews are dispensable. Is that the word? Dispensable? Dispendable? Whatever the word is. They're that now. So it made sense. It made sense. However, I know they're going to take, or at least they're going to push Andrews and Webster as a serious team not so far down the line. So the result didn't really make sense. As for the match, very, very nice catch by Wolfgang as Flash Morgan Webster comes out of a moonsault. Snake eyes, huge clothesline, very nice indeed. And even though Webster puts up a great fight with his dives and his aerial offense, Wolfgang wins with what we're now calling the caber toss, which is that sort of reverse fisherman suplex, and attacked Webster afterwards. I remember a few weeks ago, Travis saying to me that Flash Morgan Webster has the look of a heel, and I think he's right. I think that's where Webster's future lies. He's not going to get anywhere as a babyface, sadly. He's not going to get anywhere as a tag team competitor because that tag team division is absolutely stacked. It is absolutely stacked with Fabian Eichner and Marcel Bartel, Mustache Mountain, Kenny Williams, Namir Jordan, grizzled young veterans. We've got one or two more prospects coming in. So I just think Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster they're never going to be taken seriously as a team. So I think after a while you turn Webster on Andrews, and there's a feud there. Two old friends from Wales. One turns on the other because he's finding no success with him, and you've got a feud there. You've got a feud there as long as it's not one of these feuds that NXT UK do where it's just concentrated on TV aspect. This could be on a takeover. It could be a 20-minute classic, but it has to have time to breathe. Webster can't turn on in 1 week and then 2 weeks down the line it's the feud ending collision. That's not going to work or make sense. We get a little video package for the Coffee Brothers next, and then a very long Cassius Ohno sit-down interview. This is mixed with highlights of his, in-ring career, his theme tune, and him quitting NXT, which is the storyline going into this. He quit NXT, and he's come to NXT UK basically to show all the talent, to show the Travis Bankses, the Pete Dunnes, the Mustache Mountains, anyone you can think of, how to do British wrestling. It's a good interview. Cassius Ohno is a good talker. Like we said a few weeks ago, in the week before an NXT UK taping, he will serve now as the trainer at the UK Performance Centre, which has to be a good thing. Him helping train the young stars coming through and then being on the roster, having matches against the likes of Ashton Smith. This can only help them. It can only, solidify what they already know. He's going to be an asset to NXT UK. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. Next up on the card is Kenny Williams and Namir Jordan, the two men who feature on our thumb this time round, against Saxon Huxley and Tyson T-Bone. If I'm being honest, this is four men I have no interest in whatsoever, but I know Williams and Jordan are building momentum towards the tag team championships. I know Amir Jordan is really striking a chord with Travis at the minute. He really likes him. I can't stand the bloke. And Huxley and T-Bone are enhancement talent. 100% enhancement talent all the way. Decent little match. It was fun enough. I just feel like, just like Mustache Mountain have now, and like Eichner and Bartel have, and a few of the other teams, Coffee Brothers included, I think. Williams and Jordan, they have a formula now that's it's tried, it's tested, but the problem is it's becoming boring. Just like the Mustache Mountain formula of Trent Seven takes the beating, hot tag to Tyler Bate, Bate does his bit, Trent comes back in, loses the match for him. I feel like Williams and Jordan would benefit from mixing, up their formula. So do that. I think you'd need to get Amir Jordan over a little bit more before they challenge for the tag team championships. I don't see them being a true threat just yet. But once they are, then who knows? I may warm to Jordan a little bit more, but as it stands, I think Kenny Williams deserves so much better. He's the highlight of this team. Their stereo suicide dives, beautifully done, wonderfully timed, and they win with the Swanton Bombay on Saxon Huxley. What else can you say? I mean, the whole premise of this team is Amir Jordan getting Kenny Williams to dance, which I'm sure they'll do when they win the tag team championships. NXT UK are adamant, on pushing them as the next big team. I'm sure they'll beat Grizzled Young Veterans at some point. The reign will last a week, maybe, before Grizzled Young Veterans win it back. But I think if it's a lesser of two evils, if you're going to give them the titles to then split the team and push Kenny Williams onto something a little better, because there's feuds there for Kenny Williams with the likes of, I don't want to say Jordan Devlin, because Devlin deserves to be in the main event, but for Kenny Williams, there's feuds there against the likes of Cassius Ohno, Travis Banks if you turn him heel, among others. So I'd explore that rather than completely shackle him in the team. So if a tag team championship victory is going to, push him onto a greater singles career in NXT UK, I'd do it now. I'd get it out of the way. Then I'd give the titles back to the Grizzled Young Veterans and allow them to run with it. We're shown a little video of Ginny earlier in the day. She's on media duties. And she basically runs down Toni Storm. Says, is she only there because Toni Storm's unavailable? She's sick and tired of hearing Toni Storm's name, etc., etc. It basically all leads to the announcement of Toni Storm versus Ginny in a few weeks' time. We go to an empty arena again earlier in the day. Eddie Dennis is sat on his Billy No Mates, all on his own, on his lonesome, whatever you prefer to say. He says he makes his return next week against Ligero. He refers to this as, returning from exile. He hasn't been exiled at all. He just hasn't been on the card since NXT UK Takeover Blackpool. He had that one match. I think it was against Jamie Ahmed the night after Blackpool. But apart from that, he wasn't on any of the other Blackpool TV tapings because he didn't need to be. The Blackpool TV tapings weren't that good, and Dennis looked injured in that one match, so it was wise to rest him. So he takes on Ligero next week, and says Ligero will be the first victim in a long line at the hands of the malevolent Welshman. As if this episode wasn't long enough, okay, and I'm going to touch on this a lot in the upcoming book, which will be available end of October time, because it charts the first year of NXT UK, so I can't put it out till November. As if these shows aren't long enough, or don't seem long enough, you substitute in actual action, which, you need the actual action to push the stars and to build them, and hype them for something better. But no, instead of giving us another match, we get Noam Dar's return to NXT UK, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about everything he said. I've got every word he said in the promo because I had to put it in the book. But basically, he says he's back in NXT UK, blah de blah de blah, and then he sort of turns heel on the crowd. He mentions going to Glasgow with NXT UK at the end of this week, which may be the end of last week, depending on when you're listening to this. And then he touches on Mark Andrews and how Mark Andrews, disappeared from 205 Live because he got dropped on his head, etc. Mark Andrews comes out, they have a little face-to-face. Noam Dar tries to attack him, cementing him as a heel now in NXT UK. And Andrew ducks and hits a very nice jumping enziguri to send Noam Dar packing. We will see that match and, we'll review that match coming up in just a little bit. Noam Dar, just like Cassius Ohno, is going to be a great benefit to NXT UK, the roster, the stars, the show, etc. I won't give too much away about what happens later on, but, needless to say, he gets injured. So, again, no wrestling. Xia Brookside in the UK Performance Centre. She stood by a ring. She calls out Rhea Ripley for being a bully. She says she's been dealing with bullies all her life, and that next time Rhea Ripley steps into the ring with her, she's going to learn, the hard way that she's not a victim anymore. This would have been much better and eminently more believable had Xia Brookside had some fire about her. Had she really had some, oomph and gumption. But no, she delivered this as if she was reading a placid story to a group of nursery children. We get a graphic for Kaylee Ray. She debuts next. We get a vignette for Primate and Wild Boar. The hunt begins next week, we're told. And then we get video highlights of Pete Dunne and Walter. Kaylee Ray versus Candy Floss was the next match on this very, very overlong show. It was just over an hour, but it seemed like an hour and a half. It seemed like 2 hours. There's nothing to this, really. It was an impressive, dominant debut by Kaylee Ray. Her slap is as vicious as Walter's, and she wins with that gory bomb. Very, very nice move. That's it. Kaylee Ray looks dominant. I'm sure she's going to be the next big babyface behind Toni Storm once Storm goes up, to the main roster or to NXT. Kaylee Ray will take her place. And as Travis said to me on Twitter last week, he can see Kaylee Ray versus Ginny for the NXT UK Women's Championship in a long storyline. And, I'm good with that. I'm very happy with that if that happens. Mustache Mountain at an awards ceremony. And can you see what I'm saying now by the amount of pissing about backstage with all the promos and the vignettes and the fucking highlight packages you get? We didn't need this. This was basically Mustache Mountain at the Prince's Trust Award. I'm not going to explain it now because I've talked for too long this episode. Look it up if you don't know what it is. They're basically hyping a rematch against Grizzled Young Veterans. They're not done with them yet. They go through what they've done in the Dusty Classic thus far, and that's it. It was, pointless. Didn't need it here. Sid Scarlett and Johnny Saint are outside Johnny Saint's office, and Scarlett basically says that Tyler Bates' idea of him versus James Drake, again retreading old ground, we'll get there in the next part. He liked the idea so much that it will be next week's main event. Fine, that's fine. And the main event of episode 34, Pete Dunne and Walter versus the Coffee Brothers. Enjoyed this immensely. It went nearly 20 minutes, 16 minutes something. I recall writing in the book. I enjoyed, the Coffee's dominance. I enjoyed Walter selling for them. I of course enjoyed everything Pete Dunne did. But what I enjoyed more was how this match was booked, and credit to Jeff Jarrett for this. It would have been so easy to go down the old road of Pete Dunne and Walter costing each other the match, but they didn't do that. They went down the avenue of one-upsmanship. If you can do it, I can do it better. I loved the stare downs between the two. I loved if you watch this back. Like when one's on the outside recovering on the arena floor, they're just slightly looking in, sort of scouting each other. That was very nicely done. And the ending as well. The ending was very, even though you knew Walter wasn't aiming for Pete Dunne, Nigel McGuinness, who deserves a fucking medal for his commentary in New York. I didn't mention that at the beginning, but Nigel McGuinness's commentary for Pete Dunne versus Walter at NXT Takeover New York was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. He made the whole thing seem, a lot more urgent and depressing and heartbreaking, and it was just a marvellous piece of commentary. And here, he made you question whether Walter was actually aiming for Pete Dunne with the big boot. He, of course, wasn't, but he actually made you question yourself. And the ending to this match was a Walter powerbomb, pins Mark Coffey, Pete Dunne and Walter win, and then Walter stands on the title as Pete Dunne tries to pick it up. It was a fine episode as far as the action goes. I'm pretty sure I said something more about it in the book. You'll have to pick that up at the end of October. Cheap plug, Mick Foley would be proud. But again, nothing really special here. Go out your way to see the main event. Apart from that, you could probably skip the rest of the in-ring action here. The opener was fine. I've got no gripe about that. But the rest was filler. The rest was filler right up to the main event. NXT UK Episode 35 began with Johnny Saint and Sid Scala in the ring. It's becoming a little tradition now that they both open the show. It's annoying. Scala welcomes everybody to the show. They say they have an announcement to make. Now, I remember watching the results come in live from the Coventry tapings, and many people thought it was going to be the announcement of another UK takeover, which I'm hearing is coming around summertime, July, August. It wasn't that. This was the announcement that Pete Dunne could defend the UK Championship at Takeover New York against, it was basically, they're basically going to say against a challenger of his choosing, but they didn't have to. Out comes Dunne and demands that he gets Walter and leaves. He doesn't need to say anything else. He's a man of few words. That basically cements the match, though it's not been made official. It would be by the end of this episode. We don't kick off with any action, strangely enough. Plenty of talking, but very little action over the past 2 weeks in NXT UK. We are in a hallway with Toni Storm, who says that last week Ginny had some fairly unkind things to say about her. She then goes on to trash Ginny, basically calls her a spoilt little princess without saying them words. And the groundwork is laid for Ginny versus Toni Storm on an upcoming episode. That doesn't end the segment. Rhea Ripley comes up the stairs. Her and Toni Storm have a nice little glance at each other. And Ripley basically orders the cameraman to pick up his camera and then calls out Zaya Brookside. She tells her to quit dreaming. She's a little girl. And that's that. And again, more foundations laid in a very short amount of time, which is a good thing because, on these hour shows, no one needs 20 minutes of talking. We need action, which is what we got next in Ligero versus Eddie Dennis. This is Dennis's first match in NXT UK since January. We didn't, I know it seemed like exile, but you have to bear in mind it was only a month between tapings. He looked very good. He looked very fearsome. This isn't the pace that we're accustomed to with a Ligero match. It dipped in the middle. It halted while Eddie Dennis was in charge. But I loved not so much the pacing of it, but the way they went around getting the story over. Instead of trying to pin Ligero or make him submit, Eddie Dennis wanted to knock him out. There were several moments here where he, hit him relentlessly, just trying to knock him out, hoping he wouldn't get up. And it was nice to see a different approach to Eddie Dennis's in-ring game rather than just, destroy, next stop driver, done. Ligero is, of course, amazing. I wish they'd push this bloke. I really do. I'd have loved to see him versus Pete Dunne for the UK title. They have had, a plethora of matches on the indie scene, and I urge you to check out any one of them. They're all brilliant. His wheelbarrow facebuster to the knee was excellent. Springboard Hurricane Rana from the ring to the arena floor. Even countering the swinging side slam into the Canadian Destroyer was a thing of beauty. Absolute thing of beauty. And Eddie Dennis, a man of his height, having to aid Ligero on that was just... Everything about that was perfect. Go back and watch this match. Dennis wins with the next stop driver, and Ligero's win streak is broken. He deserves so much more than being the man who can beat lower card talent and then loses to upper card talent. I want NXT UK to do something with him. I want them to push him in a positive light. I want them to push him as a real threat. And maybe when... We're not going to get it for a long, long time yet. But when NXT UK do introduce a secondary title underneath the WWE United Kingdom Championship, which, by the way, should now be rebranded the NXT UK Championship with a new design of the belt, because that belt, that design belonged to Pete Dunne. Maybe when that happens, Ligero will be, taken seriously. Until then, I fear he's just going to be a, enhancement talent for the bigger guys. Next up, we get a whole fucking rigmarole video package of Amir Jordan. He hunts down Kenny Williams in the Performance Centre. He wants Kenny Williams to get them a tag team championship match. Williams refuses to go to Johnny Saint. And what we get is Williams telling Amir Jordan to, do something for him. Do a pull-up, I think they're called, on one of the bars. And then, he'll see about doing something for Jordan. We're meant to believe that it takes Jordan a week to do this. It goes through a whole load of, just comedy scenes. One is very funny, of Jordan getting a ladder to do it and Williams taking it off of him. That's amusing. But apart from that, why? Why? Why do we need this? I do not find Amir Jordan remotely entertaining or funny, and I do not want to see him in a ring in singles action. When they split this team, and they will split this team at some point, because there's no sense in carrying it on, once they've had a short reign with the titles, I don't see what Amir Jordan can do. I see a mini feud coming between the pair. Maybe Jordan turns on Williams, maybe Williams turns on Jordan, but Amir Jordan is absolutely fucked when they split. He has nothing. He has no in-ring game whatsoever. Next up, we got some action. Don't faint with shock. We got The Hunt, Primate, Jay Melrose, and Wild Boar Mike Hitchman versus Stoker and Howley. If you don't know Stoker and Howley, go and look them up on the indie scene. They're not as bad as they came across here. They did sort of come across as a modern day Deuce and Domino by the way they dress, and the hair looks like it's dripping with bacon fat. Nice little squash. The Hunt looked very dominant. Just like Ligero, I hope they're not going to use the Hunt as enhancement talent for mustache mounting, grizzled young veterans, Eichner and Bartel, etc. Because there's so much promise here. Mike Hitchman is one of the most underrated men in NXT UK and deserves so much better than tag team action, but he's not going to get it. So this is the best I think we can hope for with Hitchman. And I hope they do something with the Hunt, because the team has promise, and they can add something to the tag team division. So fingers crossed, absolutely fingers crossed for them. They win with an inverted, grand amplitude. It's basically a pop-up into a belly-to-back suplex. The best thing about this match, the absolute best thing, was that they give Wild Boar his mask back. His tusks, which make him look absolutely fearsome. Cassius Ohno versus Ashton Smith is next. And there's a massive reaction for Ohno, who he starts the match off as a babyface, ends it as a heel. It's wonderful storytelling. Smith, it's not worth mentioning Ashton Smith anymore, really. He's got a few good kicks. He gets a few licks in here and there. But apart from that, he's just enhancement talent now. It started off really promising for him with the feud against Gallus, taking Travis Banks' place, all the way back in October. But now it's fallen apart for him. He's losing to Cassius Ohno. He lost to Ilya Dragunov in the dark match of the first show in Coventry. That is how NXT UK see him now. He's the enhancement talent. You want someone put over, Ashton Smith puts them over. Gets his paycheck, job done. This was much more about Cassius Ohno. Him just taking the match from, I'm here to do some good. I'm here to show you what wrestling is, to ending up as, I'm the best wrestler on this brand. Watch as I knock Ashton Smith out, a second time. Very, very good storytelling. And after the match, Travis Banks comes down to rescue Ashton Smith from Cassius Ohno. Stare down in the aisle. Ohno tries to sneak back. Travis Banks spots him. And there's Travis Banks' next feud. Cassius Ohno is the man. Absolutely, 100%. After Banks lost to Joe Coffey, after Banks lost to Gallus, and after he lost to Jordan Devlin, all his feuds, his main feuds so far, he's lost. After all of that, Cassius Ohno is the man to bring Travis Banks back up to the next level. And he needs a big win, and we'll see what happens to him in the episodes to come in this review. No, not in this review. In the next review. But I don't like the fact that they're rushing this feud. As we'll see over the next few episodes, it's going to be one of them feuds that's rushed into a television rivalry instead of a massive takeover blowout, sadly. Gallus are sitting in a cafe next, and I like this. It was basically Joe Coffey telling, Wolfgang and Mark Coffey how far they'd fallen. It was basically him saying, we're not as good or as successful as we once were. We're not the main event talent we were. We need to do better. We should be picking up victories over, people like Mustache Mountain. We should be picking up victories over, the Walters and the Pete Dunnes, but we're not. We're basically a mid-card act. And I liked that, though they didn't say it, those words weren't said, that was the overall gist of this, of this little segment. Joe Coffey telling them that they need to basically get back to where they were and reclaim their kingdom. I like that NXT UK brought this up, because it's obvious to anyone that Gallus have fallen. They've fallen so far from grace. It's ridiculous. The arrival of Walter and the loss to Pete Dunne in Blackpool shouldn't have dropped Gallus so far down the card. It has. They're not in, the company's priorities anymore. So to bring it to light and, say what we're all thinking was a very good job, I felt. The main event of episode 35 was Tyler Bate versus James Drake. And again, like Wolfgang versus Flash Morgan Webster at the beginning of episode 34, this is retreading our ground. We've seen Tyler Bate versus James Drake. We've seen it over, and over again. We saw it at Takeover Blackpool in the tag team match. We've seen it in Birmingham, I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was in Birmingham tapings. We've seen it there. I believe we've seen it on, I believe it was on a live event before the special at some point. Either way, we've seen it 2 or 3 times now. I would like to see Trent Seven versus James Drake and Tyler Bate versus Zach Gibson. It would make a nice change, to mix this up. Zach Gibson wasn't available to wrestle. He was out with an ear injury during these tapings. He will blame Oney Lorcan for them later on. But, yeah. Still, it was a very good match, which built towards Grizzled Young Veterans versus Mustache Mountain 2, a match I am very excited to see, as long as it's not on fucking free television again. This has to be the big blowout of the rivalry. I say the rivalry, there's been hardly anything, in the way of story. Just like Pete Dunne and Walter, there was very little in the way of story. It moved at a snail's pace. At least they're doing something, to build the main feud of the tag team division, though. Bate caught James Drake in a lovely aeroplane spin from the leapfrog. But sadly, when it was James Drake's turn to, show what he was made of and take advantage, he didn't work the back of Tyler Bate for some reason. He looked like he injured the back by pushing him from the top rope, but didn't go back, didn't go back to working on the back with a camel clutch or, a bear hug or anything like that. Instead, it was chin locks and hammer locks, and it didn't make sense to me. This is logic now. It's the art of professional wrestling. If you injure or, potentially injure a body part, you work on it. You tell the story of you trying to incapacitate that person. You're trying to break the limb or break the back, or break the arm. Whatever you've targeted, just make sure you tell the story of working on it and going back to that injury. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of Tyler Bate selling that back if it's not going to be touched upon or mentioned again? As far as the rest of the match went, very good. There's no complaints about it, apart from we've seen it before, and obviously the lack of logic. James Drake looks a step above of what he was before as a single star. Now he's tag team champion. He's found his niche. The deadlift exploder into the buckles, perfect. And Tyler Bate refreshingly doesn't win with the Tyler Driver 97. He wins with a corkscrew spiral tap moonsault, which was very, very well done. Go back and watch this match if you haven't already, because it's very good. Very good indeed. And it just further highlights, how much Tyler Bate has outgrown NXT UK. We're told to end the episode that there's breaking news backstage as cameras rush towards Johnny Saint and Sid Scala's office. His name always trips me up, Sid Scala. If I'm saying it without thinking, it's fine. But if I'm consciously going into it, it just slurs me words. Walter is walking away from the office, and Johnny Saint and Scala are basically smiling. They're asked what their interaction with Walter was, and Sid Scala takes great pleasure in saying that the match at Takeover New York between Walter and Pete Dunne has been made official. And it's back to Tyler Bate to end the episode. Overall, it was, again, a fine episode. There was nothing special. Main event, decent enough to carry it. I'd go back and watch that. Smith and Ono was, good to get Ono over. Ligero Eddie Dennis was very good indeed. So, on the whole, if you've not seen this episode, watch it. You'll get the gist of the other episodes. When we come back, we'll be reviewing our last two episodes for this omnibus review, 36 and 37. Until then, I don't know what Travis is going to put in here. Maybe an advert for something or something another. But I will trust him to find you something to keep you entertained while I go and have a drink, decroak my voice, and I'll be back with you very shortly. We are back with the final two episode reviews of NXT UK of February. Not February, what the fuck am I? Of March. Sorry, I got, it was a slightly long break than I thought. I got caught up watching Travis play R-Type Leo live on YouTube. So, yeah, we're back in it now. NXT UK episode 36 began with Jordan Devlin versus Dan Maloney in a pointless match. This was awful, honestly. After Jordan Devlin's victory against Travis Banks, he needed to look strong and he needed to look, indomitable, really. And for some reason, Dan Maloney got a lot of the offense in, just so much, and it looked awful. It looked really, really bad. Devlin needed to get in there, squash him in 2 minutes, job done. But instead, it just wasn't to be. And I don't know why the match was booked like this. I don't know why Jordan Devlin was booked to, receive so much offense from a man who really doesn't matter in NXT UK anymore. But hey, hopefully it's not a sign of the times. And Devlin did win after hitting Maloney with the Devlin side, which used to be the backdrop driver, but I love the new name of it. Cassius Ohno comes out for another, deathly long promo. And if you're tired of promos in NXT UK by now, just fast forward this. It is a good promo. Ohno delivers it well. There's a lovely moment where he basically says, he doesn't like promos because they come off forced, and he doesn't like it when everything seems phony. And then he takes out his mobile phone and reads the apology from his phone, and he couldn't sound more forced. That was very, very well done. And then he basically gloats over knocking out Ashton Smith. And it's a call out. It's a call out for Travis Banks, just to further the little feud that they have going on. Dave Mastiff video package is next, and this is a weird one. This is oh dear, it's hard to describe, but basically it's Dave Mastiff sitting on a push-up bench in the gym, a workbench, whatever you want to call it, and he's talking about how he needs to show more strength and how he needs to prove people like his father and the male figures in his life, wrong or right, depending on how you look at it. It just comes off very odd. This comes off as if, Mastiff thinks he's got something to prove, or he's lost something. The last time we saw him, I think I'm right in saying, was in that terrible singles match against Jay Melrose in Blackpool. This would have made sense. It would have absolutely have made sense. Mastiff, saying how he needs to prove himself to the key male figures in his life, etc. If he'd have lost against Eddie Dennis, it would have made perfect sense had he lost against Eddie Dennis at TakeOver Blackpool. But he didn't. His undefeated streak, is still intact. He's still got, a way to go as a babyface in NXT UK. But this sounded more like a heel promo. This sounded more like, he felt like he'd lost and he needed to start again and really show his aggression and his dominance. It just didn't make sense. It absolutely did not make sense. And I'd love to know who wrote this and who booked this, because I want a fucking word with them. The graphic following this says Dave Mastiff ready. Well, not in Coventry, he wasn't. Next up, Ginny is shown at the Indian tryouts. We get a few shots of her around the country, a few shots of her beating up some Indian girl, and then she just goes on a little rant about Tony Storm. And as you can tell, I'm already getting tired and bored of the promos and vignettes. They just take it out of me. And I've watched every episode of NXT UK, since the beginning. Haven't missed one. And then I've gone back and re-watched them to get in all the little details, like every word of a promo, etc. for the book. And I'm just done with it now. I'm just done with, the constant promos, the lack of decent wrestling. Cut some of this fucking bollocks out and give us some proper wrestling. This basically sets up the match with Tony Storm. She says she's more marketable than Storm. She says she's the better wrestler than Storm, blah. And that these people are in need of a hero, and Tony Storm is no one's hero. Whatever. Next up, we finally get a match, a decent match, I should say. Rhea Ripley versus Xia Brookside. It was a very good bully versus victim story told by both women. Brookside never stood a chance, but she made you believe she did. The way she came back, the way she fought back. I enjoyed the story here. I just thought this was a wasted opportunity. Ripley wins with the Riptide. Of course she does. It was a flat ending. But I thought they wasted this here. You didn't build it up over many weeks at all. Maybe one or two. And then you just give us it out of nowhere. Again, another example of a feud that is built just for television instead of having a larger payoff. I know it led to something bigger afterwards, but I just felt like they missed the boat with this. I really did. A wasted opportunity. After the match, Piper Niven makes her debut, interrupting Rhea Ripley, as Ripley says she's the dominant female of NXT UK. Piper Niven comes out, says she's not anymore, and this is going to be Rhea Ripley's final feud. Just like the Walter match is going to be Pete Dunne's last match in NXT UK, this is going to be Rhea Ripley's final feud in NXT UK. I'm assuming that in Glasgow she will take on Piper Niven in what is going to be a great match, and then she's going to move up to the main roster, either in the Superstar Shake-Up, which you'll have already seen. I haven't seen it yet because I'm recording this on the Monday, not the Tuesday, like I said. So you'll have already seen what happens on Raw and SmackDown, etc. I'm convinced that Ripley and Reina Gonzalez are going to be the two called up by Paige. So it would make sense for this to be the end of Ripley's time in NXT UK. And if it is, then what a time she's had. What a time she's had. First ever NXT UK Women's Champion. So feud against Toni Storm. She's really headed this division. And, good luck to her. Isla Dawn is backstage with Radzi. Radzi asks her opinion on Piper Niven's debut. Dawn says it's nice to have a fellow countrywoman on the roster. At which point Kaylee Ray interrupts and says just because they're all from the same country doesn't mean to say they're a little gang. It's what it is. Sets up a match next week. We get a little look at Walter before Radzi is backstage with Trent Seven, and I hate Trent Seven promos. I hate having to write them out because they're so long. They're usually a little fact, a fact lesson, a history lesson. Radzi asks him how proud he was of Tyler Bate, and then, where he's at right now. Trent Seven says he's imminently proud of Tyler Bate, but he's not happy because Joe Coffey called him Deadwood in a WWE.com exclusive video on YouTube. So, we didn't get to see that here. So if you hadn't have seen that, you'll have wondered what Trent Seven was talking about. And he basically challenges Joe Coffey to a match. Again, retreading old ground. We've seen this before. That's the end of that little promo. We're into another one with Marcel Barthel and Fabian Eichner. And I'm not going to spend time running through it because it's just... They basically challenge Amir Jordan and Kenny Williams and say that they're making a mockery of the business, which, you can't argue about that. Mark Andrews versus Noam Dar is the match of the entire night and maybe the match of the entire set of Coventry tapings. This was fabulous. Some excellent back and forth. The counter beginning was brilliant. Basement drop kick from the apron by Noam Dar. He looks ruthless. He looks like a born-again, new ruthless heel. Now he's shook off the restraints of 205 Live. Mark Andrews is as spirited as always in singles competition. And this is really just, all go. The corkscrew into the moonsault from Andrews. Fans are relentless with the guttural roar from Noam Dar. And it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And he's absolutely brilliant until the very end. Until the very end where both men, I'm not going to say it was Mark Andrews' fault. I'm going to say it was a little bit Noam Dar's fault because he didn't jump when he was meant to. They botch the inverted Hurricane Rana and Mark Andrews lands somewhat on his head and his head and shoulder go into the back of Noam Dar's leg. Dar twists his leg, and both are carried away on the stretcher. It's unfortunate because Noam Dar would have won this match to carry on his heel run. I don't know what they had planned for him, but now it's going to have to wait, because even though WWE.com after this released a storyline statement saying that it was a sprain, Mark Andrews suffered a concussion. Noam Dar's leg injury was much more severe than first thought. He's going to be out sometime, I believe. We may see him in Glasgow do a little promo, but I've not heard anything that says he's going to be fine or cleared to wrestle. And it's a bitch, you know? You're a new start in a new brand. You get, a new character, heel turn wise, looking all good, and then this happens again. And sadly, it was the same knee that he had surgery on in 2017. So that is just shit luck. Absolutely shitty luck. To end the episode, we had the contract signing for the WWE United Kingdom Championship match at TakeOver New York between Pete Dunne and Walter, and this was fine. I liked that it wasn't like every other fucking contract signing where one person got put through a table, blah, blah, blah. Walter spoke for the first time. He told Dunne that his time was up, and in New York City the reign of the Bruiserweight will end, which of course it did. I thought they could have cut Walter's speech down. Not everyone needs to talk in wrestling, we know that. Especially when you're a giant and a threat like Walter. Just a look will do the job. But if you absolutely had to have him talking, if it meant that much to him, then you could have just cut it down to a few words. And they're face to face as the episode goes off the air. This was so far the strongest episode, pardon me, the strongest episode of the run in Coventry. Though the opening match wasn't very good, Ripley versus Brookside is worth watching, and Andrews and Noam Dar make it all worth sitting through. The contract signing isn't that bad either. And finally, NXT UK Episode 37. We begin with Kenny Williams and Amir Jordan versus Fabian Eichner and Marcel Barthel. This derived, of course, from the promo Barthel and Eichner cut on Williams and Jordan in episode 36, telling them that they were making fun of the business and, there was nothing funny about the business. Very good match. This was, Williams and Jordan's best match as a team thus far. Eichner and Barthel are always delightful in the ring. And thankfully, they heeded advice because they changed this up. They changed up their usual routine. It aided the match. It benefited them. And this was every bit the perfect, the perfect poster, the perfect advert for the NXT UK Tag Team division. Kenny Williams' reversal of a Hurricane Rana into a sunset flip on Fabian Eichner, absolutely wonderful. His bulldog into the turnbuckles, brilliant. And that fucking basement dropkick by Marcel Barthel, I thought he was going to take his head off. It looked absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. Williams counters Das Brainbuster into a roll-up for the victory. And what can you say? Williams and Jordan, they've beaten three. I'm not going to say three good tag teams because they weren't three good tag teams, but they've beaten Barthel and Andrews, and they'll be given a title shot at some point. And like we said, in the opening to this review, if it's going to get them split up, then I'm all in favour of them winning it for a week and then losing it back. Radzi is waiting backstage like some dirty fucking flasher on hiding around a street corner. Rhea Ripley comes in the arena with her case. Now, I've got a problem with this. Rhea Ripley wasn't booked on this show at all. She wasn't on the episode in the ring. Her only match in Coventry was against Xia Brookside. Now, I know they wanted to, get her opinions on Piper Niven, etc. However, it looks absolutely ridiculous. You're showing her entering an arena with her case like she's coming in ready for the episode when she doesn't have a match on the episode. This could have been cut out. The illogical nature of this could have been completely wiped out with just a normal backstage interview. But for some reason, they had they showed her arriving, which was obviously earlier in the day, before the episode was recorded. She was arriving at the arena. But to put it in here on an episode where she doesn't feature is just ridiculous. It's like, well, why has she got a case with her? I hate things like this. Radzi asks her thoughts on Piper Niven, and Ripley basically says that Piper Niven thinks that NXT UK is going to be a dream, but she's going to make it her worst nightmare. Fair enough. To be honest, this just felt like they were giving Ripley something to do. So maybe, in Ripley's case, it is better that she moves up to the main roster sooner rather than later, so they don't just have to keep finding her little things to do. We're taken backstage to Johnny Saint and Sid Scala, and you can hear the enthusiasm in my voice here. And they're asked if they're incredibly proud that the UK title will be defended at Takeover New York. Saint says this is a huge opportunity for the brand. Why does he even bother anymore? And Sid Scala is interrupted by Jordan Devlin, who poses a very valid point when he asks, why does Walter get to come in, squash a few nobodies, and then get a title shot when men like him and others have been, working their asses off for this brand since October/July. Very valid point. One they don't even bother answering. How fucking lazy do you have to be writing a promo like this to not even answer your own question? Sid Scala skirts around the point and says, well, it's too late, the contract's been signed. It's not an answer, it's just avoidance. And Jordan Devlin says he'll be watching Takeover closely. And he leaves us to, make our own minds up of what he's going to do next. He will challenge the winner of Pete Dunne versus Walter, which we now know is Walter. And that should be a cracking match. I just hope they don't bury Devlin, because if they do, then where else is he going to go? Where else does he go if you make him lose to Walter? The NXT UK... I'm going to call it the NXT UK Championship, because every fucker else does. That is Jordan Devlin's final destination. I don't see what's left for him after that. Like we said last time, you can't keep booking him in mid-card feuds. He's done the thing with Travis Banks. That pushed him into the main event. And now, I'm perfectly okay with Jordan Devlin having 3 matches with Walter. 2 he comes very close to winning, and the third one he actually wins the title. But you can't just, use him as an enhancement talent for Walter's title reign. That's not going to work at all. Next, we get Isla Dawn versus Kaylee Ray through marauding Iron Brew chants, which is a Scottish thing if you're over in America. This was fine. Isla Dawn didn't get much in. Again, like the Candy Floss match, this was booked just to get Kaylee Ray over as a threat, to pin someone who actually sort of mattered on the roster. I don't think Isla Dawn should be used in this role anymore. She's better than that. She needs to build her stall. She needs to learn her craft. This isn't doing it. The match, technically very good. It's just not a lot here. Kaylee Ray, works over the arms with holds. Isla Dawn gets a few of her kicks in. There's a nice little spot where she trips Dawn. She swivels her on the apron and cracks her with a forearm to the jaw. And she wins with the Gory Bomb. And that's it. That is it. I'm fine with getting Kaylee Ray over. However, there are other people to do it, with, other than someone who is actually trying to find her place and get her foot on the ladder. As we near the end of this episode and this review now, you've been wonderfully patient. Radzi is backstage with Tony Storm, Storm doesn't get a chance really to talk here. Ginny attacks her from behind. They fight for a little bit. Ginny gets the upper hand. Referees try to separate them, and Ginny sends her crashing into the equipment boxes. Very, very well done. Ginny looks like a badass. She looks like a legitimate contender to the throne. And yeah, bring it on. When Tony Storm is done in NXT UK, which can't be too far, in the future, then Ginny's the replacement. Travis Banks is at the Performance Centre. Somewhere backstage, I should say, at the Performance Centre. He talks about, how he used to look up to Cassius Ohno, etc., etc., and it ends with him calling out Cassius Ohno for a match, which we'll get to see and get to review on next time's review. Before the main event, the Grizzled Young Veterans come out. This is the first time we've seen Zach Gibson since Phoenix, the ear injury, which he talks about here. He goes on a bit, as Zach Gibson tends to do. It's a very good promo, unless you have to write it out word for fucking word. He finally touches on the subject of Kenny Williams and Amir Jordan being, contenders. He says that the old guard basically abandoned the locker room, abandoned the new blood, and now they're the locker room leaders. It's a basic Zach Gibson promo. You get the gist. If you've heard one, you've heard them all. And finally, we get the main event. Trent Seven versus Joe Coffey. We are retreading old ground, like we said before. We've seen this. It's the same outcome. It's almost the same match. Almost the same match, apart from this time, Coffey works over the back of Seven very nicely. James Drake should take some notes from this. And, the back work leads into the finale. The finale where Trent Seven taps out to a Boston Crab. I don't mind the ending. I don't hate it. I just think it made Trent Seven look a slightly bit weak. You're trying to now build Mustache Mountain to a rematch with Grizzled Young Veterans. The last thing you need is Trent Seven looking weak by tapping out. It was a fine episode. Again, don't go out of your way to see it. If you've got some time to kill, then, switch it on. But apart from that, you know the drill. And that brings us to the end of this week's NXT UK Omnibus Edition review, episode 34 to 37. As you can hear, I'm losing my voice. I'm starting to sound like Michael Cole at the end of WrestleMania. Somebody throw me some throat lozenges, please. We're not sure what we're going to do next time. As always, it is a little bit of a surprise. Me and Travis will make our minds up what we're going to review next. It may be WWE, it may be WCW, it may be ECW. I'm pretty sure we won't delve back into the Worlds Collide tournament again, because not only did the last Worlds Collide suck, but as far as I can see, it's our worst rated show yet. So we'll probably give that a wide berth, but we're going to go retro again. Keep an eye on my Twitter, on Travis's Twitter, at The Perfect Tenant, at the Hibiki TMD, for further instructions, further details about that. I know Travis has got a lot coming up on the channel. You can check out his WrestleMania vlog. You can check out my video tribute to Pete Dunne. And at the end of April, you'll also be able to check out my video vlog. I'm just not cool at all, really, am I? You'll be able to check out my vlog of my trip for the Love of Wrestling convention in Liverpool, where I will be meeting Pete Dunne in person, having an autograph, having a picture taken with him. And I'll be documenting the whole journey for you, from when I leave my house, to when I get to the hotel in Manchester, to my time in Manchester and my time at the convention. I will I will endeavour to not lose half of the footage like we did for my vlog in Blackpool. So hopefully you enjoy that when it comes your way. Listen, thank you very, very much for listening. Keep tuning in. Travis has all the gaming needs here, has all your wrestling needs here. Check out our good friend Logan over at Future Entertainment. His new Future of Wrestling 2K series has just dropped. It is absolutely phenomenal. And until next time, my friends, cheerio, mates.